You are now entering a recorded field transmission from the Department of Lost Places. This is archive entry 031. The subject of this record is known as The Staircase Beyond Sleep. Among the many locations preserved within department archives, few have been encounters as frequently, and few have been remembered so imperfectly. Nearly everyone who visits the staircase arrives with the same certainty. They have been there before, yet almost no one can explain when or why. The department first became aware of this staircase through a collection of remarkably similar reports gathered across several decades. The witnesses differed in age, nationality, occupation, background, yet all described the same place, a staircase, not within a building, not attached to a structure, not leading towards any visible destination, simply a staircase ascending into soft darkness. The earliest archived account was submitted by a school teacher who awoke with a vivid memory she could not explain. She recalled climbing a staircase beneath a sky filled with drifting lanterns. She remembered no beginning, no ending, only the feeling of moving upward. Years later, independent reports revealed nearly identical details. The department opened an investigation. What followed remains one of the most extensive research projects in archive history. The staircase appears during a very particular moment. Not during sleep. Not during wakefulness. Between them. The precise threshold remains difficult to define. Researchers have proposed numerous terms. Transition state, hypnagogic passage, liminal interval. The staircase appears unconcerned with terminology. Visitors simply find themselves standing before it. The first impression is usually one of familiarity. The staircase is constructed from pale stone worn smooth by countless footsteps. Its steps are broad, comfortable, ancient. A handrail runs along one side. Lanterns hang at regular intervals. Their warm light illuminates only a short distance ahead. The rest disappears into gentle darkness. Curiously, no visitor has ever reported feeling afraid. The unknown destination seems less important than the certainty that the staircase is meant to be climbed. And so they begin. The ascent is neither difficult nor tiring. The steps unfold at an unhurried pace. The lanterns sway gently despite the absence of wind. The darkness above remains inviting rather than threatening. Many visitors report the sensation that ordinary concerns begin loosening with each step. Deadlines, responsibilities, worries, expectations. These things do not disappear. They simply become quieter, as though the staircase exists beyond the reach of urgency. Several surveyors have compared the experience to setting down a heavy bag one was no longer aware of carrying. The department regards this observation as particularly noteworthy. After a period of climbing, travellers encounter the first of several landings. The staircase contains many. No two visitors agree upon the exact number. Each landing appears different, yet all share a common purpose. Pause. The first landing is often known as the hall of unfinished thoughts. The space contains countless sheets of paper drifting slowly through the air. None touch the ground, none leave the room. Visitors who examine them discover fragments, ideas never pursued, questions never answered, stories never completed, dreams postponed until some future date. The atmosphere remains surprisingly gentle. The hall contains no judgment, no regret, only possibility. The papers drift patiently through the air as though aware that unfinished things occasionally find their moment. Further upward lies another frequently documented location. Surveyors refer to it as the Gallery of Forgotten Dreams. Unlike a museum, the gallery contains no exhibits, at least not conventional ones. Instead, visitors encounter brief glimpses. A child imagining future adventures, an inventor sketching impossible designs, a traveller studying distant maps, a musician hearing a melody for the first time. The dreams appear suspended within the room like reflections upon water, not abandoned, merely waiting. One surveyor later wrote, "The gallery did not feel sad, it felt patient." The department considers this distinction essential. The staircase appears dedicated to preserving potential rather than loss. As the ascent continues, the architecture becomes increasingly unusual. The staircase occasionally bends in directions that should be impossible. Landings appear larger inside than outside. Windows reveal landscapes unlike any recorded elsewhere within department archives. A forest illuminated by moonlight, a sea reflecting unfamiliar stars, a city composed entirely of lanterns. The views remain visible only briefly, long enough to inspire curiosity, not long enough to satisfy it. At approximately the midpoint of the ascent lies a location known as the Quiet Landing. Unlike previous levels, the landing contains almost nothing. A bench, a lantern, a wide opening overlooking endless clouds. Visitors often remain there for extended periods, watching, breathing, listening. No instruction encourages this behaviour. The space simply invites it. The department has collected hundreds of descriptions of the Quiet Landing. Remarkably, they all convey the same essential experience. Relief. Not because something has been solved, because nothing currently requires solving. The staircase seems unusually skilled at creating room for thought. Or perhaps room beyond thought. Near the upper reaches of the ascent, visitors begin noticing an unusual phenomenon. The lanterns become brighter. The darkness grows softer. The air changes. Not warmer, more spacious. Many describe the sensation of approaching understanding, not a specific answer, a broader perspective. The feeling one experiences when a difficult problem suddenly appears less complicated than before. And yet no final destination has ever been documented. This remains one of the archive's greatest mysteries. No visitor has successfully described the top of the staircase, not because it cannot be reached, because memory becomes uncertain beyond a certain point. Reports grow fragmented, incomplete, dreamlike. The department suspects the staircase continues far beyond what visitors later remember. One recurring account describes a final inscription carved into stone near the highest visible landing. Though wording varies slightly, the message remains consistent. Every journey upward is also a journey inward. Researchers continue to debate its meaning. The staircase offers no clarification. Eventually visitors awaken. A bedroom, a chair, a train journey, a quiet afternoon. Ordinary life resumes, yet traces remain. A feeling of calm, a forgotten idea returning unexpectedly, a new perspective regarding an old problem, a subtle sense of having travelled somewhere meaningful. The staircase rarely leaves memories. It leaves orientation. The department classifies the staircase beyond sleep as type, liminal transit structure, dream passageway, transitional archive site, access level, recurring, most frequently encountered during periods of reflection, uncertainty, creativity, or personal transition. Final note from the archivist. People often speak of sleep as though it were an absence, a pause between waking hours. The staircase proposes a different possibility. Perhaps sleep is also a passage, a place where thoughts settle, where possibilities rearrange themselves, where the mind explores landscapes inaccessible during daylight. If so, the staircase may simply be one of many routes through that territory, a path climbed countless times, remembered only occasionally, yet somehow familiar every time. This concludes archive entry 031. The record is sealed. The lanterns remain lit. The staircase continues upward. End transmission. You are now entering a recorded field transmission from the Department of Lost Places. This is archive entry 032. The subject of this record is known as the Midnight Market. Among the many locations preserved within department archives, few attract as many visitors, and few leave behind such inconsistent descriptions. The market appears to be different for everyone, and yet, somehow, it is always the same place. The earliest verified report originates from the journal of a travelling musician who awoke one morning with the vivid certainty that he had spent the previous night wandering through a bustling marketplace. He recalled lanterns, music, crowds, endless rows of stalls. What he could not recall was what anyone had been selling. The omission troubled him considerably. Years later, when the department researchers encountered similar reports from unrelated sources, a pattern began to emerge. People remembered the atmosphere perfectly, but the details remained strangely fluid. The market appears during a narrow interval between sleeping and dreaming. a moment difficult to define. The point at which ordinary logic loosens, but imagination has not yet fully taken over. Visitors rarely arrive intentionally. Instead, they discover themselves standing beneath a stone archway illuminated by hundreds of hanging lanterns. Beyond the arch stretches a vast marketplace. The scale varies between reports. Some describe a small collection of winding streets. Others insist the market extends beyond the horizon. The department currently classifies its size as adaptive. The market appears to expand according to the curiosity of the visitor. The first thing most people notice is the light. Thousands of lanterns drift overhead, suspended above streets, rooftops, and alleyways. Golden light reflects across cobblestones. Shadows move gently between stalls. The entire market appears caught within an eternal midnight. Yet the darkness never feels oppressive, only spacious. The market is busy, not crowded, simply busy. People move through its streets at an unhurried pace. Conversations drift through the air. Music emerges from distant corners. Footsteps echo softly across stone. Visitors often assume the market must possess a central purpose, a commodity, a currency, a governing principle. The market appears uninterested in such concepts. Its purpose is exploration. The stalls themselves are unlike anything found elsewhere in department records. One merchant may display collections of unfinished stories, another offers forgotten melodies preserved inside glass bottles. Another specializes in maps depicting roads never taken. A surveyor once reported encountering an entire avenue dedicated to possible hobbies that visitors had considered briefly before moving on with life. The market catalogues possibilities with remarkable enthusiasm. One frequently documented district is known informally as the Street of Almosts. Visitors discover countless small shops lining a narrow lane. Each contains fragments of unrealized possibilities. Books that were never written, gardens never planted, journeys never taken, languages never learned, letters never sent. Importantly, the atmosphere remains curious rather than regretful. Nothing in the market suggests failure, only alternatives. The department considers the distinction essential to understanding the location. The market does not mourn what might have been, it simply preserves awareness that many roads exist. Further into the market lies a plaza known as the Lantern Square. Thousands of lanterns float above an open courtyard. Unlike the surrounding streets, the square remains unusually quiet. Visitors often notice words written upon the lanterns. Curiosity, patience, wonder, kindness, courage, attention. The lanterns appear dedicated not to achievements, but qualities. Several surveyors have suggested they represent things capable of illuminating a life regardless of circumstance. The department finds this theory plausible. Near the centre of the market stands a clock tower. Curiously, no clock face is visible. Instead, the tower displays changing constellations of light. Patterns shift slowly across its surface. No two observations have ever matched. When visitors asked nearby merchants what the tower measures, They reportedly receive a similar response. Opportunities. No further explanation is usually offered. The market appears comfortable with ambiguity. One of the most frequently documented figures is known simply as the bookseller. Descriptions vary, as they often do within department archives, yet the whole remains constant. A small stall, shelves overflowing with books, a welcoming presence behind the counter. Visitors are invariably invited to browse. The books possess unusual titles. The Conversation That Changed Everything, An Unexpected Beginning, The Year of Small Adventures, Things Learned Slowly, The Path Around the Mountain. When opened, however, the books contain blank pages. The bookseller reportedly explains this with a smile. Those stories have not yet been written. This exchange appears in so many reports that the department considers it effectively verified. At the far edge of the market lies perhaps its most unusual district, a place known as the Alley of Returning Things. Unlike other areas, this street specializes in rediscovery. Visitors report finding ideas they once loved, interests abandoned years ago, dreams set aside during busier seasons of life, not preserved as relics, alive, waiting. The alley appears founded upon a simple assumption. Visitors report finding ideas they once loved, interests abandoned years ago, dreams set aside during busier seasons of life, not preserved as relics, alive, waiting. The alley appears founded upon a simple assumption that certain things may leave our attention without leaving our lives entirely. One surveyor spent several hours wandering the district before recording a brief note. Nothing seemed angry about being forgotten. The department regards this observation as highly representative of the market as a whole. The midnight market possesses an extraordinary generosity. It never pressures, never persuades, never insists. It simply presents possibilities. Visitors eventually leave by routes they rarely remember. A side street, a lantern-lit bridge, a staircase disappearing into mist. The exact path seems irrelevant. What matters is what accompanies them. Not objects, not purchases. Ideas, questions, curiosity. A renewed awareness of possibility. Many visitors awaken with the distinct feeling that life contains more pathways than previously assumed, not because new options have appeared, because existing ones have become visible again. The department classifies the midnight market as type, Dream Commerce District, Possibility Archive, Liminal Exchange Site, Access Level, Frequent, most commonly encountered during periods of curiosity, creative exploration, or personal reconsideration. A final note from the archivist. People often imagine choices as doors, one open and the others close. The market offers a different perspective. Perhaps possibilities behave more like lanterns. Some drift out of sight. Some return unexpectedly. Some illuminate paths we have not yet considered. The important thing may not be choosing perfectly. The important thing may be remembering that the streets remain full of light. This concludes archive entry 032. The record is sealed. The lanterns remain suspended. The market continues trading impossibilities. End transmission. You are now entering a recorded field transmission from the Department of Lost Places. This is archive entry 033. The subject of this record is known as the City Beneath the Clouds. Amongst all locations presently maintained within department archives, few inspire such immediate disbelief. Not because the city appears impossible, though it does. Not because access is rare, though it is. The disbelief arises from a simpler observation. The city feels familiar. Visitors frequently report the sensation that they have glimpsed it before, through an aircraft window, in the final moments before waking, while watching clouds gather above distant hills. A certainty lingers. Not that they have visited, but that they have almost visited. The earliest verified account originates from the journal of an astronomer who spent many years studying the night sky from a remote mountain observatory. One evening, after falling asleep during a period of observation, he recorded a vivid dream. He found himself standing above an ocean of clouds. Far below, white mist stretched endlessly towards the horizon. Above, the stars shone with extraordinary clarity, and resting between those two worlds stood a city. The account attracted little attention at the time, yet over subsequent decades, similar descriptions began appearing throughout department records. Different people, different countries, different circumstances. The same city. The department eventually concluded that the reports referred to a single location, a settlement existing somewhere above weather, yet below the stars. The city is typically encountered during periods of contemplation, not crisis, not confusion, moments when visitors are attempting to understand something, a decision, a memory, a change, a question. The city rarely appears when answers are demanded. It appears when perspective is sought. Arrival occurs by various routes: railways, climbing through the mist, a winding mountain road, a staircase emerging from clouds, a balloon drifting upwards through silver light. The path differs. The destination remains the same. Eventually, visitors emerge above the cloud layer. The transformation is immediate. The sky opens. The stars become brighter. The world below disappears beneath an endless white sea. And there, upon broad terraces carved into a mountainside, stands the city. Its architecture combines elements from many cultures and eras: stone walkways, arch bridges, observatories, gardens, libraries, towers illuminated by warm lantern light. Nothing appears ancient. Nothing appears modern. The city seems unconcerned with time. Surveyors often note an unusual silence upon arrival, not the absence of sound, the absence of urgency. Conversations continue, footsteps echo, fountains flow. Wind moves through trees, yet nothing brushes. The city appears to operate according to a different rhythm than the world below. One of its most distinctive features is the cloud layer itself. The city stands above it. Visitors can walk to countless overlooks where the clouds stretch outward like an endless landscape. Mountaintops occasionally emerge through the mist like distant islands. Sunlight creates shifting pathways across the white expanse. Moonlight transforms it into silver. Many travellers spend hours simply watching. The department has recorded hundreds of observations from these overlooks. Remarkably, they share a common theme: perspective. Problems that once appeared enormous seem smaller. Complicated situations appear more understandable. Long journeys become visible as complete paths rather than isolated steps. The city does not provide answers. It provides altitude. Near the centre of the settlement stands a structure known as the Hall of Windows. Despite its name, the building contains no ordinary windows. Instead, its walls are completely composed of vast openings overlooking different scenes. Some reveal familiar landscapes, forests, coastlines, cities, fields. Others display locations impossible to identify. Yet the views are not geographic, they are interpretive. Visitors frequently report recognizing aspects of their own lives within the scenes. A difficult decision may appear as diverging roads crossing a valley, a long friendship as two rivers travel side by side, a period of uncertainty as a forest path winding through morning mist. Nothing is explained. Nothing is labelled. The city prefers observation to instruction. Further uphill lies one of the archive's most celebrated locations, the Garden of Distances. The garden consists of terraces planted with flowers from every season. Spring blossoms grow beside autumn leaves. Summer roses bloom near winter frost. At first glance, the arrangement appears chaotic. Closer examination reveals extraordinary harmony. Every season coexists peacefully. The garden seems dedicated to a simple truth. Different stages of life need not compete with one another. One surveyor later wrote, "The garden understood that becoming is not a race." The department continues to regard this as one of the most significant observations associated with the city. Perhaps the most visited structure is the Observatory of Near and Far Things. Unlike traditional observatories, its instruments do not focus upon stars, they focus upon scale. Visitors looking through the lenses report unusual experiences. Small moments become visible in extraordinary detail. A kind gesture, a brief conversation, a forgotten afternoon. Then the perspective shifts. Years pass, journeys unfold, lives intersect, consequences ripple outward. The observatory appears uniquely interested in helping visitors understand proportion. What matters? What passes? What remains? Many emerge from the experience feeling unexpectedly peaceful. Not because everything has become clear, because not everything needs to. One recurring figure appears throughout accounts of the city. Department records refer to them simply as the cartographer. The cartographer is often encountered walking the city's upper terraces, carrying rolled maps beneath one arm. Visitors occasionally ask what the maps depict. The answer remains remarkably consistent. Context. No further explanation is typically provided. The department has found this response deeply characteristic of the city itself. Context is perhaps the city's most valuable resource. Not information, not certainty. Context. The ability to see one thing in relation to another. Eventually visitors prepare to leave. The descent begins. The cloud layer rises. The stars fade. The city recedes into the distance. Many attempt to memorize every detail. The shape of streets, the colour of lanterns, the arrangement of the terraces. Yet memory rarely preserved such specifics. Instead, visitors carry away a feeling, space, breathing room, perspective, the sense that life may be larger and more interconnected than it sometimes appears from ground level. The department classifies the city beneath the clouds as type, elevated dream settlement, perspective archive, atmospheric observation site, access level occasional, most frequently encountered during periods of reflection, decision-making, or personal reassessment. Final note from the archivist. Clouds possess an unusual reputation. They are often described as obstacles, things that obscure vision, prevent clarity, hide distant horizons. The city proposes another possibility. Perhaps clarity is not achieved by eliminating clouds. Perhaps it is achieved by occasionally rising above them. Not forever, only long enough to remember how vast the landscape truly is. This concludes Archive Entry 033. The record is sealed. The lanterns remain lit. The clouds continue their slow passage below. The city remains above them. End transmission. You are now entering a recorded field transmission from the Department of Lost Places. This is Archive Entry 034. The subject of this record is known as the Garden of Moonflowers. Among the many botanical sites preserved within department archives, none appears to operate according to quite the same understanding of time. Most gardens depend upon sunlight, seasons, weather, the measured progress of days. The Garden of Moonflowers appears devoted to another rhythm entirely. It blooms by moonlight, not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. The earliest verified account originates from the notebook of a traveller who became lost while crossing a range of low hills beneath a full moon. Unable to locate the path home, she continued walking through silver-lit fields until she noticed a gate standing alone amongst the grass. Beyond the gate stretched a garden. Every flower was open. Every flower glowed. The traveller remained there until dawn. When daylight arrived, both the garden and the gate had vanished. The account might have remained an isolated curiosity had similar reports not emerged over subsequent decades. The descriptions varied in detail, yet certain elements appeared with remarkable consistency. A gate, moonlight, a garden, and flowers unlike any recorded elsewhere. The department eventually recognized the reports as references to a single location, a garden that appears only after nightfall. Visitors typically encounter the site during periods of quiet development. Not dramatic change, not crisis, not breakthrough, the slower periods, the seasons during which little seems to be happening, when progress feels difficult to measure, when growth appears invisible. The garden seems unusually attentive to such circumstances. Arrival occurs shortly after moonrise. Visitors often discover a path they do not remember noticing before, a gate standing where none should exist, a stone archway illuminated by silver light, a narrow trail winding through darkness. The entrance varies, the destination remains constant. Beyond the threshold lies an enclosed landscape of extraordinary beauty. Moonlight fills every corner of the garden, yet no visible source can be identified. The light appears woven into the place itself. Narrow paths wind beneath flower beds, small streams cross beneath stone bridges, lanterns hang amongst trees, gentle breezes carry fragrances impossible to describe precisely. Everything feels calm, not still, alive. The flowers themselves are the garden's greatest mystery. During daylight hours, they remain entirely dormant. According to department observations, they appear indistinguishable from ordinary plants. Then moonlight arrives, petals unfold, colours emerge, silver, blue, pearl, soft violet. Some flowers seem almost translucent, others emit a faint glow visible even at considerable distance. The garden transforms, not suddenly, gradually. The department considers this process central to understanding the site. Nothing in the garden rushes. One of the first locations encountered by most visitors is known as the Crescent Walk. The path curves gently through rows of moonflowers, opening at different stages. Some are only beginning to bloom. Others stand fully open. A few prepare to close. Together they create a living timeline. Visitors frequently pause there, observing how each flower occupies its own moment without competing with the others. One surveyor later recorded, "None of them appeared concerned about blooming too slowly." The department continues to cite this observation in ongoing research. Further into the garden lies a circular clearing known as the Pool of Reflections. A perfectly still pool occupies the centre. Moonlight gathers upon its surface. Visitors expecting ordinary reflections are often surprised. The pool rarely shows faces. Instead, it reveals growth. Not physical growth, personal growth. Acts of patience, moments of learning, small kindnesses, quiet achievements. The sort of developments people often overlook because they occur gradually. The pool appears dedicated to making the invisible visible. Several surveyors describe leaving the clearing with a renewed appreciation for progress that cannot easily be measured. The garden seems highly skilled at revealing subtle things. Near the northern edge stands a grove known as the Orchard of Waiting Trees. The trees bear silver fruit unlike any species recognized by botanists. Curiously, no fruit ever appears fully ripe. Visitors frequently ask why. The answer usually arrives from a figure occasionally encountered amongst the trees. Department records refer to them simply as the gardener. Descriptions vary considerably, as they often do. Yet one conversation appears throughout dozens of independent reports. Visitors eventually ask when the fruit will be ready. The gardener smiles, then replies, "Soon is a larger place than most people realize." No further explanation is generally offered. The statement has become one of the most frequently quoted observations associated with the archive. The department suspects it contains much of the garden's philosophy. Further pathways lead toward one of the most unusual locations within the grounds, the Field of Unseen Roots. At first glance, the field appears unremarkable. Flowers bloom beneath moonlight. Grass moves gently in the wind. Nothing seems unusual. Then visitors notice the ground glowing faintly beneath their feet. Networks of silver roots stretch beneath the soil, connecting flowers, trees, streams, entire sections of the garden. The hidden network is vast, far larger than the visible landscape above. The garden appears eager to demonstrate a simple truth. Much of what supports growth remains unseen. Roots, practice, patience, consistency, time. The visible blossom receives attention. The invisible foundation makes it possible. Many visitors linger there for extended periods, watching the roots pulse softly beneath the earth. The experience is often described as reassuring. The department has noted a recurring theme amongst witness reports. The garden rarely teaches through explanation. It teaches through observation. Visitors are invited to notice, nothing more, and somehow that proves enough. As midnight deepens, the flowers reach their fullest bloom. Silver pathways shimmer, lanterns glow among branches, moonlight settles across every surface. The garden feels complete, yet never finished. Growth continues, quietly, patiently, beyond immediate perception. Eventually dawn approaches, the moon descends, the flowers begin closing, petals fall inward, colours soften, the garden prepares for daylight. Visitors find themselves returning towards the gate, the path, the archway, the threshold, whatever route first brought them there. When they glance back, the garden appears increasingly difficult to distinguish from the surrounding landscape. By sunrise it has vanished entirely, yet many visitors leave carrying something unexpected. Not inspiration, not revelation. Trust. Trust in processes too gradual to observe directly. Trust in growth occurring beneath awareness. Trust that unseen roots may already be doing their work. The department classifies the Garden of Moonflowers as type, nocturnal botanical archive, lunar growth site, developmental observation garden, access level, frequent, most commonly encountered during periods of gradual growth, learning, healing, or personal development. A final note from the archivist. The modern world often celebrates visible progress, milestones, achievements, arrivals. The garden concerns itself with another category entirely. The slow developments that occur quietly, the roots before the blossom, the practice before the mastery, the patience before the harvest. Moonflowers understand this instinctively. They spend entire days preparing for a bloom that may last only a few hours. Yet they bloom all the same. Perhaps there is wisdom in that. This concludes archive entry 034. The record is sealed. The moon continues its passage. The flowers continue opening. The roots continue their patient work below. End transmission. You are now entering a recorded field transmission from the Department of Lost Places. This is archive entry 035. The subject of this record is known as the Clockmaker's Dream. Among all locations presently maintained within department archives, few have generated more discussion among researchers. Not because the place is difficult to find, not because access is particularly rare, not because its nature is especially mysterious. The challenge lies elsewhere. Visitors return with an unusual certainty. Time behaves differently there. The department does not make this claim lightly. Many archived locations appear to influence perception. Some affect memory. Others alter perspective. The Clockmaker's Dream appears concerned with time itself, or perhaps with how people experience it. The distinction remains unresolved. The earliest verified report originates from the diary of a retired watchmaker who described a recurring dream that visited him throughout the final years of his life. Each night he found himself entering an enormous workshop filled with clocks, thousands of them. Grandfather clocks, pocket watches, sundials, astronomical mechanisms, devices unlike anything recognized by conventional horology. Every clock displayed a different time, yet somehow none appeared incorrect. The watchmaker remained fascinated by this contradiction until his death. Decades later, remarkably similar reports emerged from unrelated sources. The department eventually opened the formal investigation. The resulting archive now spans hundreds of independent observations. The workshop exists, at least according to every account presently available. Visitors typically arrive during periods where their relationship with time has become particularly noticeable. A season moving too quickly, a period of waiting, a major life transition, a moment when the passing years suddenly feel tangible. The dream appears to recognize such circumstances. Arrival occurs through a doorway. Always a doorway. The door may appear in a hallway, a library, a railway carriage, a familiar house, a dream already in progress. Beyond it lies the workshop. The first impression is usually one of warmth. Golden lamplight fills the space. Wooden beams stretch overhead. Thousands of clocks tick softly throughout enormous halls. The sound should be overwhelming. Instead, it resembles rainfall. Gentle, layered, comforting. Visitors often expect chaos. There is none. The workshop operates with extraordinary calm. Every mechanism appears purposeful. Every clock occupies a specific place. Every movement contributes to a larger harmony. The department has found no evidence that the clocks measure conventional time. One of the first chambers encountered is known as the Gallery of Long Afternoons. Rows of clocks line the walls. Their hands move almost imperceptibly. Visitors standing within the room frequently recall childhood summers, quiet walks, conversations stretching into evening, days that seemed endless. Not specific memories, sensations. The room appears dedicated to a particular experience of time. The feeling of having enough of it. Several surveyors later described the chamber as unexpectedly emotional, not because it evokes nostalgia, because it reminds visitors that time can expand. Further within the workshop lies another chamber known as the Corridor of Swift Years. Here the clocks behave differently. Hands sweep rapidly around their faces. Gears turn continuously. Pendulums move with remarkable speed. Visitors often experience a cascade of impressions, graduations, moves, new jobs, changing friendships, passing seasons, entire decades unfolding in moments. The corridor reveals another truth. Time can also contract. The department notes that nearly every visitor emerges from the corridor slightly quieter than before. Not saddened, thoughtful. The workshop appears less interested in measuring time than illustrating its many forms. Near the centre of the complex stands a vast circular chamber known as the Hall of Paused Moments. Unlike the surrounding rooms, the clocks here do not move. Every mechanism remains perfectly still. Visitors often assume the clocks are broken. They are not. Each clock represents a moment people wished would last longer. A sunset, a reunion, a meal shared amongst friends, a conversation, a celebration, a peaceful evening. The clocks remain motionless because the moments themselves remain significant. One surveyor later wrote, "The room felt full of gratitude." The department continues to regard this observation as highly accurate. Beyond the hall lies one of the archive's most unusual locations, the workshop of unfinished hours. Half-built clocks occupy long workbenches, gears rest beside springs, mechanisms await completion. At first glance, the room appears abandoned. Closer inspection reveals constant activity. Invisible adjustments, tiny movements, subtle changes. The clocks are still being built. Visitors eventually realize what the unfinished clocks represent. Future time, experiences yet to occur, conversations not yet held, journeys not yet taken, friendships not yet formed. The room possesses an atmosphere of quiet anticipation. Nothing is rushed, nothing is delayed. The clocks will be completed when needed, no sooner, no later. Many visitors find this surprisingly reassuring. One recurring figure appears throughout reports concerning the workshop. Department records refer to them simply as the Clockmaker. Descriptions vary considerably. Age changes, appearance shifts, voice differs between accounts. Yet the role remains unmistakable. The Clockmaker is always working, adjusting mechanisms, polishing brass, listening to clocks, making careful notes. Visitors frequently ask the same question. What do these clocks measure? The response remains remarkably consistent. The Clockmaker smiles, then gestures towards the workshop. Attention. No further explanation is generally offered. The answer has puzzled researchers for decades, yet many surveyors believe it contains the key to understanding the entire archive. Perhaps time feels different because attention changes. Moments expand when fully experienced. Seasons disappear when overlooked. Waiting stretches. Wonder lingers. The clocks may simply be recording these variations. At the highest level of the workshop stands a room known as the Observatory of Passing Stars. Its ceiling opens onto an immense night sky. Constellations drift slowly overhead. Stars travel across darkness. At the center stands a single clock, unlike any other in the archive. No numbers, no hands, no mechanism, only an inscription. Nothing meaningful is truly measured in minutes. The department has never identified the author, nor has it found reason to disagree. Eventually, visitors leave the workshop. The doorway reappears. The dream begins dissolving. The ticking grows distant. The lamplight softens. Ordinary time resumes. Yet something often changes. People report feeling less hurried. Not because life has slowed, because their relationship with time has shifted. The workshop appears uniquely skilled at reminding visitors that clocks and time are not necessarily the same thing. The department classifies the Clockmaker's dream as type, temporal dream workshop, perceptual time archive, chronological observation facility, access level frequent, most commonly encountered during periods of reflection upon time, change, memory, or personal growth. Final note from the archivist. People spend much of their lives watching clocks, counting days, tracking years, measuring progress. The Clockmaker appears interested in another form of accounting. Not how much time has passed, how it was experienced. A joyful hour, a meaningful conversation, a season of learning, a quiet afternoon. These things resist ordinary measurement, and yet they often become the moments remembered most clearly. Perhaps the workshop exists to preserve that distinction, a reminder that the value of time and the quality of time are not always the same thing. This concludes archive entry 035. The record is sealed. The clocks continue ticking. The workshop remains illuminated. The Clockmaker continues their work. End transmission.